Welcome all. Welcome to the hearing panel meeting. I've got Councillor Courtney and Councillor Stallard here, and I've got officers Chris and Jeff. Very good. And Mr. Tasker and ladies. G'day, Monique, was it? G'day. Yeah. Welcome. Sorry, it seems a bit formalised in here. We sort of prefer a bit of more of a around the room chat, but it is the way it is set up. But just bear us, we go through just the process of the meeting, just any housekeeping that we've got. What I'll do is I'll just start with a blessing. I'll just ask all to stand. Almighty God, we give thanks for blessings which have been bestowed on New Zealand and Nelson. Laying aside all personal interests, we pray for guidance in our deliberations today, that we may conduct the affairs of this committee hearing meeting with wisdom and humility for the public welfare and peace of our Nelson community, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Thank you. So first, we don't have any apologies. It's confirmation of order of business. We've just got, as written down here, we've just got the confirmation of minutes, and then the main item here is the objection to classification of dog Max as dangerous. For the minutes, previous minutes, got no interest. No. The minutes here. I wasn't at those previous.
Yeah, I was. So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move those.
Ms. Marie, thank you for that. We'll get those moved by Councillor. And can I have that seconded? Councillor Stella?
Sure, I wasn't in attendance. You said something about previous minutes or something?
It's for the last meeting.
Oh,
This meeting, nothing.
oh, nothing to do with us.
No.
Oh, sorry. I'm a
right.
bit hard of hearing.
That's
so.
right. That's right. We're just in a process with previous meeting, which has been a different topic.
Gotcha.
We just go through minutes, and if something is incorrect, so we don't think something wasn't quite correctly recorded, we can confirm that. So I've had it moved by Councillor Courtney and seconded by Councillor Stallard.
As long as it's not a problem, I wasn't in attendance.
No, that's fine. Yeah. For those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So we come to the topic here, a report I've got in front of me, which is objection to classification of dog Max as dangerous. And we've got Richard and Monique present as well. So I've got a report here which we take as read. Can I have a presentation on that? Anything you want to clarify on that? No, very good.
That's pretty straightforward. We've got questions to ask, but if you've got any direct questions, I'm happy to explain, but it's all pretty straightforward. The dog was classified as dangerous for safety reasons, keep the public safe after several attacks. But yeah, it's all pretty straightforward in there.
And this is a dog that came up previously?
Twice previously. We've had reports of it making contact, attacking other people, yes.
And I'll give you a chance to speak shortly. Just question that. So in regards to it, had already had a classification, or not hadn't had a classification, but had to be under a
so it did have a previous classification of a menacing classification.
Yep.
So it was placed under the menacing classification to avoid bites.
Yep.
But under this classification, it only had to be muzzled. The dog did not have to be kept on lead.
Okay.
So during the third incident that we're here for today, the dog was muzzled, but not on lead, because we could not enforce that under the menacing classification, which is why we, after this incident, we made it dangerous, because that's the only way we can enforce the dog being on lead at all times, except for in a dog exercise area.
Okay. Do you have another question here, please, Councillor Courtney?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Officer Chris. Chris, do you know the breed of dog? I couldn't see that in your report.
It's registered as a Staffordshire Bull Terrier.
Yes. And the age?
I could not confirm that. 4 years? About 4.5 years old.
4.5 years. All right. Thank you for that.
Any questions?
Yeah, just what are the opportunities for exercising the dog in the case it's classified as dangerous? You say it doesn't have to be on a lead in a classified dog exercise area. What are the nearest areas?
So there's, as far as I'm aware, is it Te Huna Beaches? So there's the dog beach, the Tahunanui dog beach. That's an off-lead area. They're welcome to take Max there off-lead. There's also the dog exercise area in Marsden Park.
Okay, and just to clarify also, at several different places in the report, it talks about previous attacks. So just to clarify, the three previous that I referred to are firstly the post officer, and then secondly, a cyclist who had to hold their bike between them and the dog, and then thirdly, the cyclist that was knocked over when the dog was already muzzled.
So there was the postie was actually involved twice on two separate occasions. But yes, the rest are correct.
Yes, sir. And what's the process? So it's some menacing classification now, and if it was decided to be under as dangerous, what happens there? It's just basically stating it must be on a lead and a muzzle whomever's taking the dog for a walk, we want to take the dog.
Yes, so as soon as the dog leaves the property, so when the dog's in the public area, it has to be muzzled and on a lead. If they take the dog to a private area, a friend's place, they can let it off lead. Same as a dog exercise area. But generally speaking is in public, the dog must be muzzled and on lead.
And do we have many dogs in Nelson in that situation under menacing?
There are several. There are a handful. Off the top of my head, there's about 5 or 10.
Thank you.
Through the chair to you, Officer Chris. Those people that have got menacing dogs now, do they abide by the requirements to muzzle when out off their property and use the lead on the dog as well? You finding that?
More often than not, yes. We don't have many. More often than not, yes. We don't have many reports of
them not
abiding by the rules.
I see. Yes. Good. Thank you.
And what? Sorry for the question, it might seem basic, but what happens if a dog's got classification as Max currently has as menacing in a situation like this happens where it wasn't muzzled? What usually happens? Is there usually a warning, or is there usually hey, this is sorry, got out of his muzzle, or how's it work?
So generally speaking, if the so we start on kind of the low area of enforcement. So first of all, might be a warning if there's no injuries or anything like that. If the dog makes more further aggression while it's not compliant, we'll ramp it up. So it could possibly be an infringement, or more likely, because of the dog's history, it would be a prosecution. That's kind of the next step after the dangerous classification. And in a prosecution, the dog, if found guilty, the dog would be put to sleep on court order, and the owner or person in possession would have a criminal record.
And then with it being in a menacing, so what becomes a dangerous classification, a menacing classification, if it breaks those rules, what happens? That's when it just automatically straight goes to dangerous, or once again, like you're saying, if it's
yes, so it starts with menacing as the first, and it depends on how bad the injuries are. So in this particular case, the victim was knocked off the bike and had hit her head and been knocked unconscious, taken to hospital. I personally was leaning towards suggesting to the office that we prosecute on that occasion because of the seriousness of the injuries. But the victim didn't want us to take it to prosecution. So the only thing we could do at that point was make a dangerous classification.
Had this happened before I see it, not off the postman, etc., but that was
so there has previous injury, but it was not as serious as this. It was just a minor bite.
And this is why it was under a menacing classification prior to menacing.
So on the when the postman was involved, there was no classification. After the postie was involved, there was a menacing, which is just the muzzle. And then the lady was knocked off the bike and hit her head, and then it was classified as dangerous.
Okay, so this has been the only incident.
This is the most recent.
And because it's the consequence of lady getting knocked off.
Yeah, because of the seriousness of it, we made the dog.
And just to be clear, sorry, there's 100 questions here, just get my clear picture and I will give you a chance to respond. The dog hadn't bitten, but not got excited and knocked, ran after and knocked or attacked the cyclist and knocked him off, and then the injury happened from being knocked.
So this one, as far as I'm aware, the cyclist had got off the bike to cross the road, was getting back on the bike. The dog was being walked off lead with the person in possession, not the dog owner. The dog had, excited was not the word used, but then the dog had come up to the lady on the bike, getting onto the bike, jumped on her, she fell off and hit her head. So it wasn't a chase and it wasn't a standoff. The dog didn't rush and then stop. The dog just went straight to her and jumped on her and knocked her off the bike.
Do we, Mr. Chair, may I respond? The woman concerned that was not from her bike is present today.
Oh, okay.
Ms. McClintock. So if you specifically wanted to address any questions to her, she is available.
Okay, then she, Mrs. Clintock, are you comfortable with us asking questions if need be?
Yes.
Thank you. And just, and I might ask the other members here as well, that dog Max running up to Mrs. McClintock, is it? Yes. Was that a case of the dog getting excited and thinking it was a game, or was going for a bit of an attack and could have gone further and just knocking off?
You'd have to ask the victim that. Under the Dog Control Act, we class as an attack as contact made. So even if a dog is playful and jumping on someone, it can still be dangerous to them. So you'd have to ask that question to Ms. McClintock.
Okay. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a couple just to give my thoughts. Officer Chris, through to you. I didn't hear an exact number when the chair asked you how many dangerous classification were, how many dogs had the dangerous classification status in Nelson. I didn't hear you say a number.
At an educated guess, it'd be between 5 and 10. I'd have to double check on our records to get an exact number.
I see. And that classification, does it stay with them forever?
It doesn't have to.
Is there a redemption period? Is there a redemption?
Yes, so after a set amount of time, is it a year? I think it's after a year they can apply to have it removed if they have done dog training or classes or something like that. So if they've proven to us that this dog no longer classes a threat to the public, the classification can be removed.
After 12 months.
After 12 months, I believe it's 12 months.
So there, yes. Yes, so that's helped me. I feel very comfortable about that.
Thank you for that. Sure.
Yeah.
Aaron?
Thanks. Just a question around the legislation that states we must classify a dog as dangerous if one of or three criteria are met. I just assume we're dealing with the second criteria, that on the basis of sworn evidence attesting to aggressive behaviour, so on and so on, we have reasonable grounds to believe the dog constitutes a threat to safety of the public. That's the one where.
Yes.
And okay. And I wonder if Ms. McClintock, if you would be happy to speak to, following up on what Chair Skinner mentioned, do you have recollection of the behaviour of the dog before being knocked from your bicycle, whether there were obvious signs of aggression, or can you tell us about that?
I can't tell you because I was crossing. Push the button. Sorry. Because I'd got off my bike to cross the road, I was watching traffic. I wasn't watching the dog. I saw the dog coming. Was there, but I wasn't actually studying the dog to see if it was aggressive or not. I was watching the traffic. I got to the other side of the road and there's a narrow piece. So the man with the dog was coming through a narrow piece. So I waited for him to come through first. But I wasn't actually looking at the dog. I didn't have that time to look at the dog, but it just straight up and attacked on me.
Sorry, could I also clarify something? So the term aggression in the Dog Control Act doesn't necessarily mean barking, growling, rushing. It also includes force used, violence, assault, encroachment. So it's not necessarily barking and rushing. It is including force. So the fact that the dog jumped on someone was using force, so that's classed in the Dog Control Act as aggression.
Thanks. And just following up, so you used the word attack. So that's what it felt like. It was an attack.
Oh, definitely, because it actually hit the side of me. So that was attacking me.
Thank you.
Mrs. McClintock, thank you for coming along today. How are you?
Sorry, I'm okay now. I'm shaky because it brings it back to my memory of this dog leaping at me. But I have no lasting effects now. I did for quite some time. They thought I had a broken neck, and the concussion seemed to take a while to get over.
Yeah.
But I am back on my bike now.
Great. So pleased to hear that.
I think I know we started, not too sure if you're here, so if you have a chance to introduce ourselves, Councillor Mel Courtney and Councillor Aaron Stallard and Tim Skinner, and I think we've probably met these gentlemen here. So I've read your letter. How did the dog knock you? Did it jump up or hit
Yes.
the bike? Or
No,
pause?
it jumped up on me and I had a scratch mark where one paw hit me, and I down the side because, you know, you're forward, and you could see its mark on my jacket, my yellow high vis, and the force of it just
Okay.
knocked me straight off.
And he'd sort of let the dog sort of leapt away.
Yes, it was definitely up high because I'm quite tall and my seat's high on my bike. And so it did leap up onto me. It didn't just hit the bike side, you know, or anything. It actually hit me.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to clarify or say while you...
I don't think so.
Okay.
I just know how scary it was, and that's why I'm, you know, sort of shaky now because I didn't afterwards because I was unconscious. So I, you know,
and the
took.
and the person that was with the dog
He
came
was
to see.
He was very nice. I didn't know, and it was quite some time later that I was set up because there was people all around by then, and I saw a man standing back quite a distance with this dog, and the only reason I realised was because it was wearing a muzzle, and I saw when it came at me the muzzle on it. And so the man with the dog was very nice, and he did make sure that he stopped until the ambulance had finally taken me off, you know. So I thought that was very nice of the man that was walking the dog.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I have no question.
Cheers, sir. I'll give you Richard and Monique. Thank you for coming along. Anything you want to sort of clarify or think could be more accurate in your terms?
Yeah,
Just be clear, you weren't there at the time.
No.
Just clear you had a friend
Mm.
walking.
Yeah.
So I'll go get the picture first. You had your friend walking the dog. Somebody
Neil.
walked the dog before.
He used to walk him a lot. He's since passed away. So Max has only walked by us now, but Neil would walk him. And he was with Neil when this incident happened.
Yep.
So unfortunately, with Neil's passing, he would have been here today, but he can't, obviously. His wife has written a statement relaying exactly what Neil had told her. But we don't dispute the fact that this incident happened at all. We don't dispute the fact that it happened with Sarge, Garge, the postie. We accept these things have happened. We feel terrible about them. We feel terrible about the situation. And I did ring as soon as I got a phone number and explain how bad we felt about it. Max he's a rescue dog.
Yep.
We took him on at a year old. we went to the SPCA to pick him up, and they were very, very careful about who they placed him with, not because he was a nasty dog, but because they didn't want him going to the wrong people and the wrong areas, people that aren't going to treat this dog how he should have been treated. We took him home, had no idea what had happened to him in his previous year. We've since found out, once we got him home, after some time, he's been obviously beaten, obviously had quite a bit of trauma around just different people. So we were really, really careful with him, with who we introduced him to, what we did with him, spent a lot of time training him. He is probably one of the most obedient dogs around, by voice, by hand signals, by clapping. Rip will take him walking and he'll be in his own little dream world. One clap and he's sitting, one clap and he's right there. The dog park's the same. He'll be racking around with dogs. He's so obedient. All we want from this meeting is not for anybody to say he didn't do it, because he did. He didn't do it from any aggression or violence. He did it from being insecure. If he was really going to bite the postie, he would have bitten him. He nipped him because he was scared. From these incidents, we've worked out, we think his previous owners must have owned bikes, bicycles. So we've since worked out that's his fear. He doesn't go anywhere off our property unless he's with one of us anymore. From the first meeting with, I forget the girl's name, the dog ranger, Jess. From the first meeting with Jess after the first incident, she came to our home and she met Max. She couldn't believe it either, that he was the dog that did that. And as soon as she told us, we found out, and I said straight away, I voluntarily said that we would have him muzzled from now on, because I don't want a dog out in the public that I can't 110% trust. Unfortunately, even though we had said that to Neil, he didn't, he had him off the lead, and he had the muzzle on, but he had him off the lead when he shouldn't have. And all we want from this meeting is to bring that classification back one step, which, like you can do after a year. Max is always on lead. He's always muzzled. He goes to the dog park every day. He goes for a good walk with Rick every morning. He's a really social dog. The letter I've got from Tina, who was Neil's widow now, I suppose, even she says in there, because she lives directly across the road from us, she sees Max happily greeting everybody at our gate. There's never, ever a problem, ever, with people coming on the property, with tradies. Anybody can just walk in and he's happy, licks everybody. Even the new dog ranger that came in the last time, the gate was locked. It's always locked. Nobody can come in through that way. He had his hand through the gate, patting their dog on the head. And I said to him, this is the dangerous dog you've come to see. Oh, is it? So he's that kind of a dog. He's not the dog that is being portrayed as some aggressive, horrible dog that's going to go out and attack everybody, because he just doesn't do that.
Can I just say something? Can I read the letter from Tina Thomason?
Yeah, and I was also going to ask if you had the
So I'll read
Neil
the letter
and the letter.
that what Neil said to Tina. Now, when Max bit the postie, so a little bit of information about
who's
that.
Tina? Sorry, who was Tina?
Tina's Neil's widow.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So the postie, I work from home quite a bit if I'm not in Auckland. So I'll be on my computer and I'd hear the postie coming down the road with his radio blaring. It would give Max a fright. Max would go to the gate, start barking because he's got a fright, and the postie's abusing him. And now when I'm not there, if that happens, we don't know what's happened. So that's a little bit of insight towards the postie. But this is a letter that I want to read it. Tina wrote for what Neil's said when he got home. So when Max bit Gage, Neil said to us, hey, he's bitten the postie. The second time Neil said, Max has bitten the postie the second time. And I said, oh no, this. So he's always told something that's happened. So this is what he said to Tina on the way when he got home from this incident. So my name is Tina Thomason, wife of the late Neil Thomason. I'm writing to confirm Neil's version of the incident with Max on the railway reserve, where it is alleged that Max jumped up at her and knocked her from her bike. Neil's version is this. The woman was coming towards them off her bike just after crossing the road. She was about to get back on her bike when Max got a fright at something else and jumped sideways, accidentally knocking her from her bike. There was no reason for him to say it happened different to how it did. So as far as I'm concerned, this is exactly how it happened. Neil was very disappointed to his version was never acknowledged by Jeff Welch, and also that Jeff was betraying Max so badly. Max is a lovely dog who I watch happily greeting every person who arrives at their home. He is not a nasty dog. He did not set out to bite her or jump on her. He just accidentally, unfortunately, knocked her from a bike, which knocked her down. Now that Neil is no longer with us, he can't be at the meeting and speak his version himself. But this is exactly what he told me when he got home that day. Yours faithfully, signed by Tina Thomason.
So I guess what like I said earlier, what we really want from this is just to go one step back. We don't want Max to be classed as a menacing dog. In our belief, he's not, a dangerous dog. He's not a dangerous dog. These incidents that have happened from the last one on, what we have done for our own lives and for Max's life is he goes with nobody else except for us. He goes out only ever on lead. He goes out only ever muzzled. He never goes anywhere on a footpath where there's going to be bikes going past him. He's at the dog park every day, racking with other dogs.
I've eliminated him from that situation. I've taken him out of that position where something may happen or may not happen. It's not going to happen again because he's not on that situation. He's in a park or he's with me at a park where there's no one else or other people. I've got hundreds of people, not hundreds, but a lot of people will say, I'll come to the meeting, I'll write letters. Thank you, but we can, this is enough from Tina, which is the truth about the incident of that day.
And honestly, I've owned dogs. We've both owned dogs all of our lives. And I'd be the first one, if I believed Max was a dangerous dog, I would be the first one to say, hands up, take him, put him down. Because I couldn't live with myself if I knew that he was a dog that was doing that deliberately, that there was something in his psyche that he believed, or every time he saw a person, he was going to attack them. I couldn't have a dog like that in my life. We have children come to our home.
And we said that to Jess as well, that she came round, that if he's going to continue doing this, we will put him down because we're not going to have that situation. But as I say, we've eliminated him right out of that area.
After we worked out what his trigger point was, that who would have thought? Cyclists and saddlebags, bikes and saddlebags. Bizarre.
Thank you. Thank you. That in the situation, so you're saying that the dog accidentally knocked.
So when that lady came through on foot, there was obviously some other cyclists coming in behind when Max got a fright as that lady went past on her foot, not on her bike and bumped into her back wheel. That's what Neil told Tina, and that's what Neil told us.
So the dog had left Neil, or the dog was already on the other side of the road, or on
They met. So
coming towards.
So that lady come through, and there's some more cyclists coming behind her. Max got a fright, bumping into her back wheel, which caused the lady to fall off and hit her head. That's what Neil has said to us. As I said to you, if Neil had said to me the other version, we would have taken it on the heart and gone, right, that's fine. But because Neil had not said that, and it was never acknowledged by you that his side of the story was true, it was never acknowledged. That's why I feel so strongly about getting that classification taken off him.
And I guess the point is that we're trying to make is that he didn't see somebody and think, oh, good, I'll attack that person. He got a fright like any of us can do and jumped sideways. And we feel horrible that it happened. But I don't believe he should be classed as a menacing dog, dangerous dog, when he got a fright. And it was kind of not out of his control, but He didn't do it deliberately. He didn't attack somebody deliberately. And like I said earlier, we've taken all of those, as many steps as we possibly can as dog owners, to remove everything possible from his life like that.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. I'll come back to the Councillor Stello.
Thanks. Look, thank you for being here and for your testimony. You've mentioned that when you take Max out, he's always muzzled and on the lead, and he goes to the dog park daily or so.
Not the dog park.
Sorry?
Not the dog park. He's not required to be at the dog park.
No, he's not required to be on the lead at the dog park. Yes, that's understood. Thank you. And the classification as dangerous dog requires the dog to be on the lead. So in that
And muzzled.
So in that sense, a lot of what you're doing already is consistent with that classification. So I just want to ask you, if Max is classified as dangerous, how will that negatively affect, how you interact with Max, or what Max has compared with what you're already doing?
It sounds a bit stupid, but it affects your psyche when you own a dog that's dangerous. That I don't like that. I don't like being an owner of a dog who's classed as dangerous. We also, our registration fees are a lot more than what they would be if he wasn't. We also can't, not that we are going to, but we can't sell him unless we notify the council. We feel like we're kind of a little bit of a doggy prison. We can't take him anywhere for more than 24 hours. Is that right? 72 hours without notifying the council where he is, which we just think these things are a bit over the top for a dog that is not the dog that's being portrayed. He's not a nasty dog.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation and all your answers to the questions you've received. Our officers said that their estimation was that Max was a 4-year-old plus dog. My figures say that you got him at 1-year-old from a SPCA, and you've had him for a year and a half, so that's 2.5. Is he still a young, as far as you go?
About 3
years, have you?
I mean, he's an adult dog, but in his mind, he's a puppy.
Okay.
As all dogs are, but he's an adult dog.
Mm.
And apart from these instances, we've had no problems at all with him. Even when I used to walk him and not have him off lead, greeting dogs, greeting people, greeting children. It's just the bites.
With Neil, everything was with Neil and not with us. Not that I'm blaming Neil,
No.
but it was almost like he was trying to protect Neil for some reason. We don't know. We don't know his why. Well, we can't read his mind. We don't know. It's like you guys can't read his mind.
And
They don't know.
if you're a dog owner or a dog empathiser and understand dogs, especially staffies that they term as nanny dogs, they look after everybody. These dogs have like an innate ability to understand people's emotions and how they're feeling. We didn't find out until after Neil had passed in his autopsy that he had pre-existing a lot of health conditions. And once we found that out, I mean, this sounds a bit airy-fairy, but once we found that out, we did wonder whether Max was the only one that knew that and sensed that in Neil and was kind of protecting him also in a way. Just a bit of, wallpaper, I suppose, on the story, but...
So when he got the classification as menacing, he'd bitten or nipped the postman, not once, two different postmen.
Two
different people, same person, same time, different times. Different times. And that was a situation where the dog lunged out at the person, or
We don't know. We weren't there. No one knows because they weren't there. It's all hearsay of what happened.
okay, but the postman knew what the post lady or postman knew.
Man, Gage. The first time I can't actually recall, he
Sorry,
was
who was
rushing
Jess?
along.
Jess. His name Jess was brought up before.
Jess, the dog ranger, dog
Oh, sorry. Okay.
control officer, whatever you call it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
Mm.
Thank you for that. Let's got a few questions. Mrs. McClintock, you're right for Mrs. McClintock, is it? Yes. I understand, and I've read, and you've explained it well. You're obviously observing where you were going and where you were at the time, and the dog, not to a dog actually come at you. So you couldn't tell its manner. But do you think it was an accident, or did you think, from what you recall, that the dog sort of saw a situation and wasn't really aware of you, was aware of something else?
Well, the point is there was no loud bang or fast movement. And if the dog can do that very quickly, like it did,
Yep.
I had no reason to. I mean, there's dogs on the railway reserve where you're allowed to bike all the time. I'm very aware of dogs. Having them on the lead is actually not even the answer, because the dog runs across and the lead goes across. So you've got to be very, very careful. And I'm on there a lot.
So you're coming one way.
Yes.
And Neil and the dog were coming, or the dog was separately
Coming the other way. Yes.
And you guys were the only people in that.
At that time, we were. There was no other cyclists.
So the dog has either got spooked by something else.
Yes.
Or spooked by you, or took an interest.
Yeah, there was.
In you.
I didn't notice anything beforehand. No.
The dog, and the dog was coming towards and would have known you there, or the dog was coming a different direction and suddenly, well, you're there.
Yeah, well, that's because of the gateway on the railway reserve. Okay. It's a bit narrower, you know. So I waited for him just to go through that gate before I started, and it's a wee bit downhill, so I was only going slowly, thank goodness.
And so Max the dog come through, and then
it was sort of beside me, I thought, when it just decided to lunge at me.
You were between the little barriers on the.
No, there's only a barrier thing on one side, and that didn't have any effect. There was, I don't know. I know apparently my head hit the asphalt. Neil told me that I bounced. My head went down and I bounced back up again. But the point is, if the dog can do it because something frightened him, there was nothing that I know of that frightened him. There was no bang or anything. So it could do it any time.
Do you think the dog would have known you were there? I mean, dogs are pretty alert.
Oh, yes, it would have. Well, it jumped up and it did actually hit me. It didn't hit the back of the bike because there was even a mark on my jacket. And my daughter that was pointed out to me, because when they took me to the hospital, I was in and out of consciousness for quite a while. And it was said, and I did see it afterwards, where the dog actually hit me. And I'm up, as I say.
I mean, clawed your dog, but you.
The dog clawed, hit me.
Hit me, not
yes, well, because you could see the claw mark. Okay. But I mean, it happened, and I can understand Neil not knowing that it actually hit me, because it happens very quickly. And he probably got a shock when the dog leapt at me at any rate. So he may have thought it got the back of the bike. There's no reason for him not. But the dog can do it. If it can do it then, for no reason, it can do it any time. And I mean,
do you think the dog spun around?
It just, I don't know. It just hit me. I wasn't watching the dog then. I'm watching where I'm going. I
understand.
Yep. So I don't know. And I'm concerned, like as I say, they thought my neck was broken. Next time, the innocent person can be damaged.
It's great to hear you've the confidence get back on your bike, but I assume, is that the case, you're pretty nervous around?
Oh, I'm so nervous, around dogs whenever I see them on to be honest, I don't think dogs should be on the railway reserve. It's a cycleway. There is dog parks and places, it's where public go and where bikes are. And if it's going to do it if it's got a fear of bikes, it can do it at any time, even in a quiet area where somebody comes up behind it on a bike. Is it going to do it again?
Thank you.
Thank
you. Aaron.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. I wonder, what is your best estimate, acknowledging we don't know what's going on in the mind of Max or what he's aware of, but reasonably, how far in terms of time in advance of being struck do you think Max might reasonably have been aware that you were also in the area? Like
I
just
don't-
2 seconds, or might it have been 10 seconds? Like was
Well,
there a
they
clear
were
view?
coming towards me, so he would have been able to see me.
So potentially it could have been quite far in advance. There was
Yeah.
no obstruction. He could
No,
have
there was
seen.
no obstruction.
Okay.
So
thank you.
there was not a fright because I was there all of a sudden. It's very open area,
Okay. Thank you.
very open. It's not some parts of the railway reserve, the bushes are up against the footpath, but on this part, he had full view. So
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you. And Richard, just getting back to earlier when you said Max struck the back wheel, I just wonder if we could explore that a little. Is that from the letter? And also, are you saying that gave rise to a fright which led Max to leap up onto the cyclist? Or do you take that as meaning Max didn't make contact with the cyclist, only the back wheel, and that caused the cyclist to fall? I wonder if you could clarify that.
That's exactly what Neil said.
Neil doesn't have any reason to lie because, as I said to you, when he bit the postie,
Sorry, could I just interrupt?
when he bit the postie,
Yeah, can I just clarify? So when you say that's what Neil said, Neil's version is that the dog never made contact with the cyclist, only the back wheel. Is that correct?
He doesn't say.
he doesn't say that. He said he made contact with the back wheel, forcing the lady off her bike. Now, did you not ring up Neil
Oh, so,
to
sorry.
say that?
No.
She's right.
So we understand Neil's letter and what he
His wife's, his ex-partner's.
it was Neil's letter by Tina. And I think a questions have been answered. Any other questions on that?
Just to clarify, your understanding of Tina's letter. So Tina's saying Neil's account to her was that the dog struck the back wheel, but not the cyclist.
That's right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So he got back on your bike when Max got a fright. Max got a fright at something else and jumped sideways, accidentally knocking her from her bike. That's what his version was.
Say that. He doesn't.
No, that's the word. Okay, thank you.
We weren't there, so we don't know the full story.
Understand that. To the officers here, Chris, Jeff, and Mandy. So yeah, as you can see, we're trying to work out a picture of what happened. It's probably possibly less about what's happening, but what's best going forward. But anything you sort of clarify on what happened at the incident there and how that triggers us to the state of dangerous, because whether it was the dog getting frightened accidentally, and it's quite likely to possibly do that again, not any dog could do that again. It was frightened, not all dogs, or whether it was intent. Anything you want to clarify on what our questioning, give us a bit of.
Mr. Chair, just if I could, just to help you with the understanding of each of those reported incidents that came into us, could I share with you how they were recorded when they were notified to council?
Thank you, that'd be very helpful.
So in the first instance that was reported on the 18th of May, the actual wording on the service request is, and this came from the staff safety person from New Zealand Post.
Yeah.
Called on behalf of a work colleague, Steve, who I think is Garge, you know him as Garge, Mr. Gargulio, is it? Stephen Gargulio, who is a postie and who just got bitten by a dog around 10:35 a.m. this morning, twice. He was doing his run when a person was walking along there, which I presume would have been Neil.
Sorry.
That would have been Neil walking the dog, yep. Along there on the Ridgeway, the dog ran up to Steve and he yelled at the owner, who really didn't, presuming the owner to be Neil, because he was the person in charge of the dog, who really didn't realise what was going on, and the dog lunged at him again and bit him twice.
So this is not even on the property or near the property, this is
That was out on the pavement,
away from the
on the
property.
Ridgeway, so that, yes.
Miles away from that property.
Yeah, a long way away. So
Okay.
it was being walked up on the Ridgeway, it would appear, by Mr.
It's not
Thompson.
protecting a property as such, it's seeing a threat or a scare or something, and
So on that, that's important that you've obviously recognised that a dog may well react differently on property to how it may react off property.
yeah, it's not property, so
So
that was property, one property, okay.
Yep, so that was the first incident. The second one dated 26th of May 2023. reported directly from Stephen Gargulio on this occasion. Received a call directly from Stephen. He advises that he was biking down Songa Street just past the Turf Hotel at approximately 11 a.m. and he saw the offending dog from last week's report and the same man walking the dog again. The dog was on a leash but not wearing a muzzle. As he passed the dog and Walker, the dog lunged up and bit Stephen's finger. Stephen stopped and got off his bike and stood behind it, which is a protection technique that postie delivery staff are trained to use.
Yeah.
Use their bike as a barrier. And the dog was at the end of the leash trying to get to him. At this point, the man walking the dog was pulling Max back and controlling him. Stephen and the man had a conversation about the muzzling as a result of the last report, and Stephen said the man suggested he was given a muzzle for Max, but he didn't make him put it on. Stephen said to the man that he wouldn't report it, but upon arriving home and speaking to his wife, he decided to call council. Stephen suggested another warning or infringement for failing to muzzle may be required. And on this occasion, he says that the injury did draw blood. And then the third incident reported by Mrs. McClintock is dated the 16th of June. And if I may, the one thing I would like to say in response to the issue raised by the dog owners, the incident itself reported by Mrs. McClintock was investigated as an injury to a person as a result of the behaviours of a dog.
Yeah.
There was no suggestion at any time that the dog bit Mrs. McClintock or snarled or growled or bared its teeth or any such thing. Simply, it was an injury to a person caused by the result of the behaviours of a dog. Now, if I recall correctly, Mr. Tasker suggested that perhaps I believe his dog was quite aggressive and violent and portrayed it as being so. That's not the case. The issue is obviously council receives a report of aggression or of injury as a result of the behaviours of a dog, and there are processes there that we need to follow. And as my team leader, Chris Bascom, may report to you in a moment, we obviously have to work within the parameters that were afforded under the legislation. Yeah. In a perfect world, it would be very nice to be able to say we can trust everybody to voluntarily do what we ask them. Yeah. Unfortunately, history would dictate that, well, sadly, we can't. We have to have legislation that's enforceable. So it's about, as Mrs. McClintock has alluded to, this is about what options do we have to try and prevent a reoccurrence that are enforceable.
And with the biting, when that second time, by rules, it should have had a muzzle on. Is that right? This is at the stage it was under a dangerous, menacing dog, I should say.
It's classified on that second occasion.
So it should have had a
in between the first and second bites, my understanding, and forgive me because they were dealt with by Jess Jacobson, who's no longer working for us. But
can you say that about the second one again? Sorry, what you just said.
My understanding was that up on the first bite with Garge, when it was brought to your attention, there was just an understanding that it wouldn't go any further and the matter would be dealt with by way of you voluntarily controlling the dog in future, and the postie was happy with that. On the second occasion, my understanding is that in between those two, I think it was Mrs. Tasker had said that she would voluntarily muzzle the dog, would get a muzzle for the dog.
But at that stage, it wasn't a requirement.
No, it wasn't a requirement.
Yeah.
But you had volunteered to get a muzzle, and my understanding is the dog wasn't muzzled. It wasn't. It was only after that second bite that the menacing classification was applied.
It didn't need to have a muzzle at the time when it.
No,
the second time it's since.
No, the owner had volunteered to.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the dog was not muzzled on that occasion, and that's when the menacing
after that
classification was applied, which then makes it enforceable that the dog must be muzzled.
Thank you. Cheers to that. I'll check if there's any other questions. What we will do shortly is just go into a bit of an adjournment so we can work out between us, the three of us, to work out what's the best direction forward. But prior to that, I'll just check if there's, and I'll give you a chance to comment. Any other questions before I go into an adjournment? Any questions? Anything, Mr. McClintock, anything there you wanted to clarify? You've explained well. I understand the situation. I'll be exactly the same if I was cycling along, looking where it's happening, and suddenly whatever happened.
Still like clarify that the dog couldn't have hit. Sorry, I forget. That it didn't hit the back wheel, and it couldn't hit the back wheel because there's a saddlebag in the road protecting the back wheel.
Yeah.
So it could have hit the saddlebag, but it certainly didn't hit the wheel.
Okay.
And as it was pointed out to me, I hadn't seen that the mark. It definitely hit me because the mark was there.
Thank you for that. Any question? I won't allow to asking questions of the others here, but you're welcome to make any statements to the three of us.
I'll just elaborate a wee bit on the saddlebag. It's the saddlebags that are the problem for Max. It's not so much the person's not. It's not so much the bike. It's the actual saddlebags. So walking Max on the reserve, if a bike with that saddlebags goes past, he doesn't even bat an eyelid. A bike with saddlebags on, that is what gets him. And we didn't know that until these incidents happened. We have no understanding why, except maybe that his previous owner had a bike with saddlebags. That's all we can assume. But it is the saddlebags that caused the problem for him, and that's why he reacts on those.
So that could happen again. I could be riding as I do on my bicycle, my saddle.
Again, but sorry.
And so it could happen again, whether it's a dog feeling it needs to be aggressive, or it's just feeling it's being defensive, or it's got a flashback of a previous situation. That could happen again.
Potentially, if we hadn't taken the measures that we have done, there's nobody that cycles around inside the dog park. It's a dog park for dogs, and wherever Rick walks them on lead, it's early in the morning on a park, and there's nobody else there. So we've taken those measures to remove anything that with a saddlebag out of Max's life, because we realised that's his trigger point.
So I understand you'd rather it's kept as menacing rather than dangerous.
Yes.
We don't disagree that he bit the gauge, so he's a menacing dog. We understand that and we accept that.
No, I understand
We don't
that.
accept the fact that he's a dangerous dog because some of the events of
I understand.
has not happened.
For us going forward to stop a situation happening again, there's certain levers and a situation, if he's still under it's dangerous, whoever's fault it is, it could happen again. But you're saying you'll volunteer to prevent that from happening again by treating it as and you can correct me if I'm wording this wrong, treat a dangerous dog by having it on a lead, having it on a muzzle, only being walked by you guys, and only being let out in an allowed area. That's what you're saying. In that situation, you don't believe will happen again. But unless you do that, I'm not saying you won't, I understand that you'd follow through with that, but there's nothing for us to, that could happen again for any reason if it was.
We don't know, Tim.
I'm not sure what
We
you're
don't
saying
allow
there.
that to happen.
Well, as a question of Councillor Stallard said before, if it was a dangerous dog, that would be the same situation as what you're volunteering to do, but it won't have that classification. I understand the ongoing issues there. The other option is that he could go through some training if it was put as dangerous dog, and it went to some training, and I assume, sorry for us, question of staff here, there will be some way of assessing if you think the dog is safe or trained well enough to bring it back to menacing rather than dangerous, and it can prove itself. Is that?
If they can prove to us that they've done satisfactory training with the dog, yes, they can apply to have it removed. And indeed, yes, I believe it's up to 12 months.
And without trying to, I'm just trying to get to where people are at here. That would be an option. Would that be an option?
I'm wondering what training. I mean, he's more obedient than your average dog already. I'm wondering what sort of training is going to make him better around saddlebags, or I don't understand.
So I'm not a specialised dog trainer. That would be up to you to be able to provide the evidence that you've done sufficient training that we could believe the dog wouldn't injure anyone else if taken out in public. So the onus falls on the dog owner to make sure that the dog is under control.
One more, just also we're still in a situation of we'll have an adjournment very shortly. We go forward. There's several options here that we can go. So if it was to retain as menacing, and this happened again, a saddlebag, someone walking along with a saddlebag, for whatever reason it gets off its harness or gets off its leash or whatever, it happens again. What happens?
It's highly likely that it would result in prosecution of the dog owner.
Yep.
And upon the dog owner receiving the prosecution, the dog is required to be put down.
And I've had to sit through a hearing. I've had to sit through a hearing in that situation. And it's I've got a question from Councillor Stella.
Thanks, Tim. Just a question for officers. You mentioned just briefly earlier on how you at least considered prosecution in this case for the incident where the cyclist was knocked off her bike. Could you just speak to that a little? Did you consider it, or did you think it was required, and how it met the criteria for prosecution in your mind?
So it met the criteria that it had history of causing injury, the severeness of the injury caused in this instance, and the fact that it already had a classification to try and keep the public safe, and that classification didn't work at that time. But that's why it's not just my decision if it's going to be a prosecution. It's discussed with the officers and the general manager of compliance and that kind of thing. But having seen the type of injury that this can cause, I would have pushed myself for a prosecution in this case.
So just to clarify, the ultimate decision not to go ahead was made internally amongst officers.
Yes.
And to what degree you mentioned that Mrs. McClintock was not wanting to pursue prosecution? To what degree was that a fact?
That's a big factor, because obviously she was there at the time. She can attest to, like you were talking about, how aggressive the dog is, how she felt. If she was not willing or not able to go through prosecution, we would not try and push it because she would be required to be there. And there's a little public interest in forcing someone to do something that they don't want to do, really.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Chris, Officer Chris, can you just help me with this, please? I think, Monique just said a moment or two ago that what sparked the dog's interest was the saddlebags. Now, up until then, I had always, reading the report and a couple of times over, felt that it was more the bicycle that was the attraction. And in the report somewhere, I thought I read that one of the members of the public used a bicycle to keep themselves away from the dog. There was no mention of a saddlebag then. So in that case, can you just fill that in, please?
Sorry, was there a specific question?
The question is, I see a difference there. No saddlebags for the person that used the bicycle to protect themselves. So I always thought, up until I heard Monique just say before, that it was the saddlebags.
That was the postie. So I'm assuming the postie would have had saddlebags.
Okay.
But in saying that, I can't ask the dog what it doesn't like. So the dog owner might believe it's saddlebags, and they may be correct, but I can't ask the dog. The only thing I am sure of is the dog has attacked and caused injury.
So that was the postie's dog that, and the postie that used the dog as a.
So that was the postie that used the bike.
And you're assuming that he had saddlebags. Okay.
I'm assuming you would as posties.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's all questions I need. Anything else? Can I adjourn in a minute? Anything? I'll give you anything else you want to? I think I do understand it very well where we're at, and appreciate it's a difficult decision for us all here, and understand situation going through. I'll go into adjournment, but just any last comments from either parties?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, just again to help clarify, I do understand the concerns that the dog owners share in respect of the dog being deemed dangerous. I think the important thing to note with that is that those are the terms that are used in legislation.
Yeah.
And if I could perhaps make the comparison, when a dog is classified as menacing,
Yeah.
it may be classified menacing by its behaviour,
yeah,
or by its breed.
Okay.
So just so that you're aware of that to classify a dog menacing, there's two criteria.
Yeah.
It may be because, for argument's sake, it's a restricted breed, such as a pit bull terrier,
Yeah.
or because it's inflicted injury or caused harm or whatever. Now, the unfortunate thing there, and what I'm trying to highlight here, is how people feel about the actual
Labelling.
the terminology and the labelling.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when we classify a dog, as we're required to do, if we classify a pit bull terrier,
yeah,
by breed,
yeah,
it may be the loveliest dog in the world.
Yeah.
When you meet it,
yeah,
maybe a lovely dog, but it's called menacing, and the owners don't like the term. Now, I tend to agree with that. I think if the legislation was such that it said we're going to actually not call it menacing, we're going to call it a restricted breed, they wouldn't feel so concerned about the title that is bestowed upon the dog. And I do feel for the Mr. and Mrs. Tasker here that I think perhaps part of the issue for them is that, as Mrs. Tasker has alluded to, that they're suddenly deemed to be horrible owners because they've got a dog that's deemed dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, that's the terminology in legislation. If the terminology was we're going to classify your dog as a dog that poses a risk to cyclists with saddlebags, it would be more on the money and it may be somewhat less offensive, perhaps. But the terminology dangerous is what the legislation uses and is what we're required to use in all the documentation and all the records that we keep. It doesn't necessarily mean, and I know it must feel like the situation for the owners, that they have a dog that everybody thinks poses a major threat because it's such a horribly aggressive, dangerous dog.
Yeah.
It's just the terminology we have that applies to the situation.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We're going to adjourn deliberations, so we can either, I'll just check with officers, we can either stay in here or we can move out. We'll move out, and then we come back. Yeah. I think that we've got a bit of discussion with staff, just getting out where we've got some options here and best way forward for that, and then we'll come back in here to make that decision. But we'll just need some time to deliberate, so we'll adjourn for a period of time. thank you for everyone being here. Thankful parties today, and all the work that's been done in the past and present and looking at the future. We acknowledge the continued work that you've done as Max, as rescue dog. We acknowledge the continued work and care of Mr. and Mrs. Tasker and undertaking the rescue dog and work that you've done with Max and the continued work that you're doing, and there's no reason to doubt that. We thank Mrs. McClintock for her affidavit and being present here today, especially after such an incident, and also thank the staff and their role of this position. We've considered very carefully the objections that you've presented to us for dismissing the classification. The reasons for our decision today, which are unanimous between the three of us, is that dog has had a record of 3 attacks in recent periods. The need to protect the public is paramount. We accept that Max the dog may have suffered ill treatment in the past from previous owners and acknowledge the work you've been doing with a dog, and we appreciate he may be scared at times, but the result of the attacks, especially recent, are more important in regards to public safety than the cause of the attacks. It is also clear in legislation that a territorial authority must classify a dog as dangerous. As much as a labelling may not seem as fit, it must be classified as such if there's reasonable grounds to believe the dog is a threat to people. Thus, decision of this panel is to dismiss the objection and uphold the classification of dog Max as dangerous. I'll move the motion as been recommended. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Aaron Stallard. I'll put it. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. I appreciate what you've done there, but and it's probably pointed out quite well by the officers when they got the task as dangerous. I know it feels like a burden and a reflection, and I don't feel it's a reflection of you guys at all. And the term maybe is a better term if there was such legislation, but it's no reflection on the good work and what you've offered, and I know you'll do. But the well-being and the safety of the public is paramount in this situation following legislation. But I do appreciate the work you've done on that, and also appreciate Mr. McClintock presenting here and having the confidence to get back. And I'm sure that Max the dog will do well. He's got some good people looking after him. Thank you. I end the meeting. Thank you.